The first time I saw Newton Reddick, he was drunk outside the Poquelin Society building on East 47th Street. He was leaning against a cart filled with dollar paperbacks, looking pretty jaunty and not at all minding the cold. The Poquelin was a private library that had been started during the Gilded Age by a gang of bank clerks who believed reading during their lunch hours would make them into Rockefellers and Carnegies. It was still a private library in 2005, and also a scholarly society dedicated to the art, science, and preservation of the book, whatever that meant. Its membership rolls included a lot of academics, rare book dealers, and a few unfashionable, old-money eccentrics who came down from the East 70s on the chance of finding a literary evening. Newton Reddick was one of the book dealers, or had been anyway. I was told he was mainly a collector now. Collector seemed to me an overly polite term, but at least it conveyed the fact he wasn't making any money at it. He was living off his wife, a much younger woman with inherited wealth to whom he'd been married just under 10 years. That earned him a certain pride of place among the library's members, it appeared. He was holding court outside the Poquelin, leaning against that paperback cart and waving a cigarette around in his free hand, while a trio of red-faced old-timers hugged themselves against the cold and seemed to hang on his every word. His voice, a crisp tenor, bounced off the skyscrapers and carried across the street to where I was standing with a coffee from the bodega on the corner of 5th and 47th. He was talking about somebody named Richardson. "The problem with Richardson," he was explaining to the others, "is the man has no sense of history, no feeling of a higher purpose. He thinks a Pulitzer makes a book worthy." The error of that kind of thinking was obvious to the little assembly outside the Poquelin, and before stubbing out their cigarettes and going back inside, they had a few more choice words for the Richardsons of the world, the ones who can't see the forest for the trees, who wouldn't know greatness if it walked up and punched them square in the nose. They were a lively bunch, those old bookmen. On another night, under different circumstances, I might have enjoyed listening to their fool talk. It was a Tuesday in November, just before Thanksgiving. All over the city, people were drinking more than they should and visiting friends. It was the season for parties and parades and little flings that didn't mean anything. Normally, I kept away from divorce work, but the case had come to me on referral. A woman calling herself Anna Reddick had shown up at my apartment the previous week, on Thursday evening, saying that she had met my friend Ulises Lima at a party. Ulises was a Venezuelan poet who sent me a lot of work. He thought it was awfully funny that I was a lawyer, not an artist or a writer or a poet like everyone else. He thought it was even funnier that I refused to work any longer at one of the big law firms in Midtown, and was trying to make a go of it on my own in a careless and not very profitable way. He had sent around a good number of prospective clients for consultations. There were always people in his world who needed help and hadn't any ideas where to begin looking for it. Some had money, and others would try to pay me with paintings or meals. Sometimes I took them up on it, though I didn't have an eye for that kind of thing, the visual arts, and I would have to ask someone, Ulises or another friend, to come by and appraise the thing for me. It was an endless cycle of imaginary economies, small profits and favors done impulsively or not at all. That was fine so long as your rent was controlled. Anna Reddick came with cash in hand, $10,000. She had the bills neatly stacked and facing the same direction, the way a waitress arranges her tips at the end of a shift. "Catch him at it," she said, "and you'll get a bonus, paid out in cash, check, wire, money order, however you'd like, your choice." It had been a lean few months, and I was in no position to turn her down. Something about the case bothered me from the start. Whatever it was, I managed to put it out of my mind. The job, as I understood it, was essentially a controlled buy, just as you might have bought some weed on the street or a box of Motorola's that had fallen from the back of a truck, or 100 other things whose provenance and ultimate destination you couldn't be sure of. Only in this case, the weed was books.